Hello, I'm so happy today to present to you my dear friend, Lindsay Nolan. I've known Lindsay about, I don't know, 4 years or so. She's been going to our church a long time. I'm just not in her season. And I would hear about her. And then then she gave her testimony at our Bible study. And I thought, wow, who is that sharp, intelligent, articulate, cute girl who has been suffering because her daughter has had cancer at that time. So she was telling a celebratory story, and then there was the relapse. So now Lindsay and I have been co-leading a Zoom Bible study on Wednesday mornings at 6 a.m., which has been a stretch for both of us, especially for me. And so, Lindsay, if you could just give us a description of your family, maybe a little background, family background, then Claire's story, and then the mother's story. That's your story. And then we'll get into the legacy question. So welcome so much to Welcome Heart, Living the Legacy Life.
Thank you for having me.
Sure.
I'm very familiar with being with you on Zoom once a week. What a blessing that is. There has been more than one time that I have been in the shower like 3 minutes beforehand and had to race with wet hair towards
right.
you. So
but
nice
I just wear a robe. I wear a robe. So today I'm not wearing a robe. So new look.
We're dressed. A little bit about me. Been married for 20 years, going on 20 years, to a wonderful man who grew up at Grace Church. So have been married into the family of Grace. So we have 3 wonderful children, 2 in middle school, and then our youngest is in 4th grade. She's 10. We have spent a lot of years, married years, traveling all over the country, following my husband's career, and subsequently mine. Landed in San Luis Obispo 6 years ago, and just so grateful to be back home to our forever town that we love so much.
Tell me a little bit about your ministry was it Houston?
Yeah,
was that the most recent stop before San Luis again?
It was.
Okay.
It was.
Yeah. How did God use your gifts there?
Yeah, I had 3 itty bitties. They were all preschoolers at the time. And we were in this wonderful church, had a lot of Baptist roots, as many churches do in Houston. And I was in that season where I just really, really needed fellowship, was new to the area, was homebound with these 3 little kiddos and in desperate need for fellowship. And I had attended the MOPS group in other places and thought, we need a MOPS group in our church. So it took a couple years of building teams, getting women rallied around this idea, and then bringing it to the executive board at our church before they approved it. So it was a lot of building and selling the idea, and then God just blessed it tenfold, and it was amazing. We had over 100 women at one time attending the MOPS group, and it was just so beautiful to see these women using their gifts, these kids growing in fellowship together as preschoolers, and just growing. It was one of the first in that area to have a MOPS group. So.
What did you learn about God during that building process?
I learned that God can use you in every stage and season of your life. When I thought I had not a moment to spare, as I was nursing one and potty training another and racing after a third one, I thought I have no extra time for anything else. And God used my inadequacies, my perceived inadequacies. What I thought was, I have these babies and I have no time for anything. God used that specifically for his good to be able to build a MOPS group.
That's really good. That's worth the price of admission right there, but we've got lots more to share. So Lindsay, tell us about Claire's first part of her journey and then the second part.
Yeah, our youngest daughter is Claire. At age 6, back in 2018, she was diagnosed with stage 4 anaplastic large cell lymphoma. It completely consumed her midbrain and was systemic throughout her body. To say that it was a shock is an understatement. She had been sick for some time, but never suspected cancer. We immediately started treatment at Stanford Children's Hospital, and then underwent 6 very intense rounds of chemotherapy. And she was that typical cancer kiddo with no hair, in and out of the hospital, neutropenic, homebound, out of kindergarten for the last half of kindergarten. And yeah, that was...
What's neutropenic?
Neutropenic is when your levels in your blood drop really low, where any small infection, like a tiny little cold, can put you into the hospital. So neutropenic is, you have to be extra cautious. So before masks were a thing, she would wear a mask everywhere, and we didn't really bring her to inside spaces because
And how old was she at the time?
she was 6.
And how did you discover it, or the doctors discover it?
A wonderful dermatologist in town biopsied one of her lesions.
Wow.
She's known this doctor throughout Stanford because Claire's one of the very few that was diagnosed by a dermatologist.
Wow.
We also had a great pediatrician that held our hand through all of it.
Here in town?
Here in Slow, yeah. Her blood work always came back perfect, and her symptoms were coming and going. So it was kind of hard to pinpoint. Cancer just is. It's hard to diagnose. It really is.
How did you balance taking care of your 2 older kids this first round?
That was the hardest.
Why?
Honestly, because my mama heart, I
Mhm.
missed out on soccer games and, all everything that was going on in their lives. I wasn't there every morning to wake them up and make their breakfast, and I just missed out. It was really, really challenging. It was a huge burden on my husband as well to keep life going and maintain his job and kind of keep the train going down the road. It was very challenging.
Was that because you were living at Stanford?
We were, yes, we were. We would come home in between treatments for a couple days, but it honestly was really hard to drive that far. She was so ill, and we had a wonderful family who had a home that allowed us to stay in their home.
Oh,
So towards the end, we stayed there.
and for those who aren't in California, how far is the drive to Stanford from here?
It's 3 hours,
Okay.
door to door, 3 hours.
Mm.
Yeah, we ended up putting Nest cameras inside our home so that Claire and I could log on and see just what was going on. And we felt like we were a part of everyday life.
Mm.
So we'd have to warn people when they come over. We have Nest cameras in the house. We're not recording you. We just needed to feel desperately connected to each other, just in the normal humdrum of life.
That's something I never would have thought of if you hadn't brought that up, that you just don't feel a part of the normal, everyday comings and going, laundry on the couch. Did you put your dishes in the dishwasher? What time are you getting up? And how late were you up doing your homework or whatever?
Yep.
So
Exactly.
difficult. And maybe it's too early to tell, but how did your older 2 kids respond or react to Claire's first round?
They were young at the time, so they were 10 and 12 at the time. They really just reacted to how we reacted. They were so impressionable, and so when we had this positive perspective on her journey, that it wasn't, we never really called it a battle, we called it a journey because we weren't sure if she was going to survive or not. They reacted to that and responded and thought, okay, well, we're on a journey, a family journey together, and using terms that were positive and in like kind of a new light affected how they responded to it. I mean, certainly there were challenges. They definitely were jealous that Claire was getting all the attention at times. They were really scared and really sad at times, but because Dan and I were this united front on this is a journey that our family is going through, they rallied into that, and they really enjoyed actually being in the hospital and seeing it firsthand those couple of times that they were allowed in.
So when you first spoke at Grace about your story, I think you mentioned that you were able to get some supportive women right away who helped you. Can you describe that experience or what happened?
Yeah. Wonderful women who have been on this journey of healing for their own children who were sick in the area. They instantly showed up and called and supported us in ways I didn't even know we needed to be supported.
Like what?
Like saying, you need to find a social worker as soon as you show up. Here's food on your doorstep. I know you didn't ask for it. Like Costco groceries, just boxed stuff. Here is my cell phone number, call day or night if you need anything. Just this non-judgmental, we are here for you, we love you unconditionally. And that was a level of support I had never experienced or received before. It was so Jesus-like. It was, I'm meeting you in your mess, in your fear, and I will support you in all of these emotions that you're experiencing. None of it is off limits, and you're here and loved,
Mm,
your whole family. And we
mm.
will support and fill in the gap in any needs that you have. And if you don't know them, we're just going to guess and provide.
It makes me cry.
Mm.
Um, what did you learn about God in that first round?
Hmm. That he is so present in times of need.
Mm.
Never experienced that level of acuteness of God.
When
And
when she well, I guess when I first heard you, she was in remission. Did you know at the time that it was a possibility the cancer would come back?
no, no, I was in this fairy tale. No, my husband and I talk about it all the time. I actually really love that it was just this ignorant bliss of she's cancer free and she always will be.
Wow.
Because we had fought so hard that it just wasn't a possibility. But she did relapse then 16 months after being cancer free.
Okay. I remember the day you called me. I was in the CVS parking lot and turned off the car, and because you and I were going to go do a retreat together.
Yeah.
And you were also director of women's ministry at the time. So you called me and said, I'm not doing the retreat. I'm going to tell them that you can do the whole thing. I said, what is going on? And we all were in shock, and you immediately quit your job. I remember one thing about you sharing both times is that taking care of Claire became like a business spreadsheet full-time job for you. Explain that. And, not everybody has your business acumen. Is that the word? Smarts. And I'm not sure I would do that. I would just call someone else like you and say, would you please keep track of all my daughter's markers and all that sort of thing? But you really got into that. Do you think that helped you survive having to take care of all these details?
Absolutely. It was I hope, a healthy coping mechanism. It was something I could control. It was something I
There we
could
go.
document. And so I wanted to be able to have control over something. So if it wasn't that, I would have found something else, right? We all have that. As my hope is that even though I coped in that way and it helped me, and I hope it helped Claire, I hope I still completely relied on God and knew that He was the one that was providing everything, and I didn't
Mhm.
need to keep all those numbers straight. Although it helped me emotionally be able to do that.
When she relapsed, how old was she?
She was 8.
I remember you filmed her with her bald head twirling or something, and you sent it into Ellen's show, but you never heard back.
I didn't, because her hair looked exactly like Ellen had
Yeah,
grown out to that stage.
yeah,
It was so cute.
so cute. So tell us about the second part that you're still in, the relapse.
Yeah, yeah. So we are in a relapse phase right now. Same cancer, anaplastic large cell lymphoma. Obviously, we caught it early. She wasn't at stage 4; she was at stage 3 when she relapsed. So still quite progressed, but much easier than the stage 4 diagnosis. Since the first a regimen of chemo wasn't effective because she relapsed, we had to go with a different treatment path. And it's an experimental treatment path. It is approved in adults, but isn't approved in children yet. And it's called brentuximab. And she gets a dose of that chemo. Just at first, it was once every 3 weeks. And we're slowly adjusting her treatment pattern now that we are into our 3rd year, actually, of treatment for relapse.
And how much longer?
We don't know.
Mhm. And is it making a difference? Do you know?
Yes, yes, she's had a PET scan, and there were only traces of cancer left. So of course, they want to continue until there's no signs of any cancer in any of her scans. But the thought is that it's just kind of holding back the gate, and we're waiting for either another treatment that we know cures this type of cancer to come on board, and we use that, or a miracle, right? And then it goes away.
How how does she handle it differently this time as an older child than as a little one?
Mm. Well, fortunately, she had an amazing experience at her first battle through cancer, her first journey at Stanford Children's Hospital. She loved the nurses and loved the doctors. And so she actually missed going to the hospital and
Wow.
missed all, like, it was such a wonderful experience for her. And I think that's also kind of coping. I don't think she quite remembers some of those hard things. She only remembers the good,
Mm.
which is wonderful. Although I kind of beg to differ a little bit. I want her to remember that it is hard. We don't want to, the goal isn't to always have cancer. The goal isn't always to live in the hospital. The goal is, what is God's purpose for your life? Hopefully it's in a healthy state, but her purpose right now is in a non-healthy state. But all that to say, going back to Stanford and going through another round of treatment, she loves it. She was like, okay, let's go. I do have a picture of her when I first told her that she relapsed, and she was quite sad. She definitely cried, and it took a long time for her to process. But she really enjoys the time together up at Stanford.
And I remember that was right before COVID. And so all your kids had to stay home actually even before the shutdown, because if they brought their friends' germs in the house, then it wouldn't be good for the youngest. So that was quite a stretch, I think, for your family, and hard on everybody.
Yes, my kids will not let me forget that I pulled them like 4 days before everybody else, before the school shut down. I was like, I see the writing on the wall. This is just going to be for a little bit, is what I thought. Of course,
Yes.
You'll be, we're the first ones out. And they're like, I didn't get to say goodbye. And I was like, well, you're not alone.
Yeah, so tough.
Yeah.
And also she didn't lose her hair the second time, but wasn't she beginning to lose her eyebrows or something? And you were,
Yeah, I thought.
Well, she felt worse because she was more aware of her appearance. When the older we get, and then there's that middle, thankfully she wasn't in 8th grade, but I remember thinking, oh, she's mature enough to where it bothers her.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And so now at first she wanted to lose her hair again. And now at age 10, she's like, no, we're keeping this hair. But I definitely was staring at her eyebrows for a long time. I would take pictures and send them to friends and say, is she losing her hair? I can't tell. Her eyebrows are fine.
Now, how was she able to keep doing ballet? She has enough strength physically to do that.
She does. Yeah, she does. The way the chemo works is there's cycles, right? When it's a targeted therapy, so it targets the cancer. So there's a couple days post-treatment where she really does feel crummy, but we schedule it so that she doesn't miss any ballet. And then by the time she's recovered, she's back at it. She's also just very stubborn and determined, which is a good attribute, some good attributes in her. So she loves ballet so much that she will really just fight to get through a class. And her instructors know, okay, Claire's struggling today. We're just going to give her a little bit of an easier curriculum, but she loves it. It's her life. She loves being there. So she wouldn't miss it for anything.
Do you sense a deep relationship, that she has a deep relationship with Jesus, or not?
I do. Yeah. She hasn't had a, profession of faith, or she hasn't experienced that, but being raised in a Christian home, Jesus is in her world all the time. So I think she's experienced him on an amazing level.
At some of her lowest points, I think you mentioned that she was ready to go to heaven, or you had those heaven talks.
Yes, a ton. It's very natural and normal in the hospital. There were days when we knew that children had passed away, and it is just commonplace on the floor of a children's hospital. We see it in the nurses' eyes. The doctors come in and we can tell. We see parents walk by, and we know that child that was next door is not leaving. The parents just left. And we can't hide that it's just very normal. And so living in that, it kind of normalizes it a bit. So it was actually it was easier to have that heaven talk with her, because she was seeing it all around her. And so it was a nice, easy segue to say, okay, well, let's talk about that. What does that look like? Should Jesus be ready for you to go home? What, let's talk about that. We had this great heaven book by, I'll get it to you. I don't remember and she just loved that. So we talked about, eating ice cream and hanging out with grandpa and riding elephants and all sorts of really neat things.
Wow. A children's book on heaven. Is that what you mentioned? Yeah, we can put that in show notes later. What advice would you give to another, to other people who know someone in your position? If these people know someone like you, Lindsay, whose child is suffering with a disease where they may not come out of, what what counsel would you give them the best way to support someone in that situation, the mother in particular, since this is a Mother's Day broadcast?
Yeah. I think the best way I experienced that amazing love and support was by women who just not showed up with any preconceived idea of what they would get out of the interaction with me, but just showed up with an anticipated need, right? So they would show up and there would just be flowers on the doorstep. No knock at the door. We need to visit and socialize because I might not have been in the right state. Or at the front door were like Ziploc bags and Cheerios and, who knows, socks for my son, and just anticipating, hey, I was at Target, I grabbed this because my son needed it, and I thought you might need it too. So really it's just showing up and giving whatever you have at that time, to just anticipating those needs, even if they're wrong, right?
Wow.
There's times where I was like, I'm not going to eat this soup, but my husband did. And that was great, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know he needed the socks, but
Yeah.
we can always use more socks.
Right. I think I made you something that I thought later, oh, they probably didn't eat it. Oh, well, it could be used. The dog probably ate it. You had a great dog. And I remember too, you, between the two times when she was in remission, you began speaking for Stanford Children's Hospital Women's, what's that called, a guild?
Yeah, they had a foundation.
Were you able to talk about God at those events?
I was not, but I was able to allude.
Okay.
But Claire was able to talk about Jesus because nobody took the mic from her. So we would talk a ton about what she was going to say on our drive up. And she would say, well, I'm just going to tell them about Jesus. And I was like, great, you do that. And so there were so many times that she would say, well, Jesus was holding my hand through this, or do you know that Jesus is merciful? She used to say that all the time. And
wow.
She had the mic and she would stand on a chair. It was really cute. And there, like, ladies would be nodding, and then the director would be back there just smiling, like, we're not going to take the microphone away from her. This is her experience. And so I didn't, but Claire was able to. So praise God for that.
Oh, no kidding. Has she, out of the mouths of babes, right? Literally. Has she ever said, well, God must not be merciful now because I have it again?
No. No. She says, this is my story. God has, for whatever reason, allowed this to be part of her story. And so Claire just looks at it right now. It could change when she's a teenager, but right now she says, I'm going to use it for good.
Wow. She's living through what people just intellectually go through. She's living through it physically as well as emotionally. This podcast, is on living a legacy life. What do you see as the legacy that you want to pass down to those who know and love you?
The legacy that I would like passed down is the idea of leaning into your struggle. That the struggle,
explain.
The struggle in your life, whatever that is, whatever feels like a struggle to you, could be as big as cancer, as small as something not very big, but it's a struggle for you. And by leaning into it and recognizing what that struggle is, it allows you to rely on God. It allows you to recognize that you're not perfect. You can't control everything, although those are things that in my humanness, I want to. That struggle is actually where God shows up and where those jewels and that strength can come from. And it tells the tale of God's goodness, all the ways that he has provided in those times of struggle, in those times of pain. And those are stories that I hope to, similar to our Bible study right now, pass down to my children. Say, remember what God did in this moment. Even though cancer came back again, he showed up in this moment. And here's an example in our humanness of God being right here in this story, in this process.
How are you going to make sure that you remember all these stories?
I have no idea. What do you think I should do?
You can talk later. Absolutely, write them down, but you don't have time today. So I suggest you get that. I'll just tell you what to do because I usually do tell you what to do. But I suggest that you get a fresh notebook. I always like a fresh notebook, and that you put dates in it if it doesn't already have it. And that every time you see God show up, and every time you're discouraged, and every time God gives you a verse, and every time there's a new wrinkle in the process of her healing or not healing, that you jot it down, because you will not remember, as smart as you are.
You're right.
So later there'll be, and I don't mean a paragraph, I mean just a few words, because otherwise you're going to go, oh, that's just too much work.
Yeah, I'm just not even going to start. But
Yeah, I'm not going to even start.
writing
Yeah.
down.
Do you want me to go to Home Goods right now and get you one?
Mm-mm.
Let me know. That is a beautiful legacy, to lean into the struggle, whatever the struggle is right now, so that, not just so that you're leaning in and feeling sorry for yourself, because I'm sure you have wept, but you lean into the struggle, feel it. I don't think we're supposed to deny it, because I think that causes worse problems. It's like welts coming up later because we haven't dealt with what's inside.
Mhm.
Because it allows us to rely upon God. It allows us, I think it clarifies our seeing ability,
Mm,
where I don't look for miracles unless I desperately need one.
it's true. Right.
So I think it clarifies our vision. And we sing that old beautiful hymn, "Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart." And then he gives us cancer.
Hmm.
And he says, I want you to see me even in the dark side. So how are you doing this right now, where you are leaning in and looking for God
Hmm.
and seeing God, not just looking?
Yeah. When we are at the hospital, Claire and I lean in. We try to not cope by watching movies or looking on our screens. We lean into every single person that comes into our room.
Oh, how do you do that?
Oh, they become like family now. So anytime a new person comes in that we don't know, oftentimes nurses are quiet, right? Or custodians are quiet and they just kind of sneak in and out. And we go, "Hi, who are you? We haven't met you yet." And then we chat and we get to know them. But those that we do know, which is almost everybody, we know about their lives. We know who got engaged and who just had a baby and who's planning a trip. And we ask about all of those. And it feels like a family. And then
Wow.
when Claire has hard days or hard treatments, they can tell, and there's this level of empathy. Not they're amazing humans, that they already have that, but because we have this relationship with them and they know our faith because we talk about it very openly, they just show up with these beautiful hands to serve us and know us well, because they see us through all of those journeys, and we have become family.
Well, that leads into the question, how do you show God's welcoming heart to your world? Well, your world has been Stanford Children's Hospital a lot. I remember seeing pictures of you taking these gorgeous donuts or something that you were taking up to the nurses. Was that for a particular celebration, or you just like to do that?
I think we did it at Christmas
Okay.
time. Yeah, we had custom donuts made and custom cookies, and we like anytime we're up around a holiday. In fact, the
Oh.
next time we'll be up around Easter, right after Easter. So we'll probably bring something Eastery for all of
Okay.
them.
And also you've brought presents to other kids who are suffering,
Yes.
like a special snuggle blanket or something that
Mhm.
you know what's been good for Claire, so you buy it for another child.
Yeah, yeah. It's easier because of COVID, things have changed a little bit. When we were on the floor, it was easy to just drop things off outside of everybody's door next to us, and we would make things and give them little notes so they knew who we were. It's a little bit different now because we're just up for a day.
Oh,
But
okay.
so it's easier to love on the nurses and doctors than the other
Hmm.
patients.
Hmm. What would be your parting wisdom for someone who is struggling in a path such as yours, where your child is suffering and you're not?
Mhm. Um,
What
that's a
do you
big
say to that mother?
I would probably say, do not take any moment for granted, right? Just show up every moment, knowing that you're relying on God for his strength. And know that your perception of that experience really does affect your child's perception of their experience. Um, there were times that we certainly had rose colored glasses through Claire's diagnosis and treatment, but it allowed us to have this positive experience when it was very, very hard. We were able to laugh and cry and dance and sing and mourn all at the same time, because we had this perception that there was no fighting what she was going through. We just had to release it and make the most beautiful memories that we could through it, not knowing what the outcome would be.
Wow, this has been powerful, and I praise the Lord for your friendship. And we will continue praying for a miracle for Claire.
Thank you.
We love you so much. Thanks.